All right, good evening, everyone. This is Coach Reem Joshi from Outrival Racing, and welcome to the Campfire Stories on racing your first Ironman. I am going to turn it over to Coach Jackie to introduce the panelists and just give you an overview of what we're going to do this evening.
Hey guys, tonight's super informal. We have a series of questions and we're just going to ask them to our two expert athletes, which are Mike Manoli and Jennifer Tice. And they have both done Ironman, and they're going to kind of talk about their experience doing their first Ironman. And you guys can jump in and type any questions into the chat box as we're going along. And then at the end, we'll open it up for a few minutes for some comments and anything else you might want to ask or comments, anything like that. So Eric Call, another one of our coaches, is going to be joining us. I think he actually just logged in. He is running kids around to sporting practices. So he's on his phone. So I don't think he'll be on video. So we're just going to take it away. So we're just going to ask the questions, and Jennifer and Mike are going to take turns commenting or answering, and then we'll go from there. And don't forget, if you have a question or comment, type it into the chat box. Reem will see it, and then she will read it to Mike and Jen. All right. Do you have anything to add, Reem?
No, that's I think that's all I have.
Okay. Yeah. Eric Cole, do you have anything to add? I'm assuming that's Eric down there. He's on mute. I'm assuming not. He's driving, so. Oh.
I'm muted. I'm here. I can hear you guys loud and clear.
Okay. All right. So first question is, what was your first Ironman? Mike?
Okay. It was 2017 Ironman Chattanooga. So that was my first full. I had done a half before then, earlier in that year, but my first full was Chattanooga.
And Jen?
My first full was Ironman Florida 2020.
Yep, I remember both those. And
Don't
guys,
okay.
Jennifer, what made you decide to do an Ironman, a full Ironman?
So I signed up for Ohio half Ironman 2019. And I always said that I was never going to do a full Ironman, and everybody was crazy. But I completed Ohio, and, you know, I did my phone call with Reem 2 or 3 days later. And I said, well, you told me this was going to happen. I'm like, I really want to just push myself. I feel like I did well with Ohio, and I'm ready to do one. And I had a plan. Plan changed a little bit. The plan was to get a bike in 2020 and do Ironman Florida 2021, but who knew that plans were going to change. So I just wanted to push myself because I knew that I could do a half. So I wanted to push myself to do a full. And Reem was there with me, and I don't think I could have done it without her. So
I think probably 99% of us, as we get into triathlon, say we are never going to do an Ironman. Pretty sure. And Mike, what about you? How did you decide to do your first?
So I was the same way. And then I started training with you and Eric, and became better friends with that group. And then I heard all of your stories about Ironman, but I was not going to do an Ironman. But then it was just progression. So I had done a sprint, done a few Olympics, and then started coaching with Eric. And from there, signed up for Haines City. And at the same time, signing up for Haines City, signed up for Chattanooga. And you had done Chattanooga the year before. So that's kind of how I chose that one. And then, yeah, it just kind of went from there, and it was a progression as I got into triathlon. But I was just like Jen. At first I said I'm never going to do one because everybody was crazy. There was no way. And here we are.
What were your initial feelings or thoughts after you guys hit that submit button? After you're paid the $800 and some dollar fee? What were the first things that went through your head?
I texted Reem a picture, and I was like, done. I was like, and then she's like, okay, let me know how you feel tomorrow. And I was like, okay. And I woke up in the morning and I was like, I really signed up for Ironman Florida. Holy cow.
I
But
feel
I was
broke.
excited. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was excited.
What about you, Mike? How'd you feel?
Well, mine was don't get injured because I didn't buy the insurance. I refused to buy the insurance because I thought if I buy the insurance, that gives you an out. And so I didn't buy the insurance. So my first thought was, this is going to happen because you spend the $800. Um, and then it was kind of just like a whoa. And then talking to Eric, and he was like, do you realize how much training, goes into it? And we started going over it, and then that was it. Hit the ground running.
So a lot of times people sign up for Ironman um, because they've indulged in too much alcohol, or they feel a lot of peer pressure from their friends, or all their friends has done one and they feel left out. So did you guys have any what word would I choose to use? Pressure or anything like that? Or were you clear of mind and you signed
Mhm.
up alone, or you signed up with friends? Like, what was that process like?
I
For
didn't
my
have any peer. Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
no,
Mike.
no, no, go ahead. Go ahead, Jen.
I didn't have any peer pressure. There was a plan that there was going to be a few of us that were going to be going together. COVID changed all that. A couple of them signed up after I did. We were kind of gonna, do group rides together, and I don't think it was ever a pressure or a time of pressure. It was just going to be kind of fun that they were going to be joining me on it. Um, but I don't feel like you should do it for pressure. I think you should do it for your reasons, and it shouldn't matter about anybody else's reasons.
Yeah, there was no peer pressure outside of the the more you got into triathlon and the more you hung around people that did Ironman, it was almost like that was, even though they never said anything, it almost felt like that was the next step. That was the next progression. And I had different whys also. I wanted to prove it to myself, but I would just, I would say the same thing that Jen does. Don't do it if there's peer pressure. If you're doing it because your friends are doing it and you think you have to be quote unquote an Ironman to be a real triathlete, no, that's not the case at all. There's a lot of triathletes that just do sprints and Olympics. So make sure you have a good why before doing an Ironman. But I didn't have no, there wasn't any peer pressure. It was just a natural progression for me.
And how did your family, partner, significant other, how did they feel after you signed up? Were they kind of like, oh man, now what? Or very excited and happy for you?
Um, well, we
Like
don't have
mom,
kids.
dad, spouse, kids, whatever, like friend.
I think anybody that's outside of triathlon, and outside of maybe like for my wife, she knows triathlon through me, and now through all of you guys. But my family, my brothers, sisters, parents, they had no idea what it was. I mean, I don't know how many times I had to tell them what the distances were. So they just looked at it as, another race. Um, my wife was excited because this was going to be my first one, and she knew that was a goal that I wanted to do. So, and not having kids made it a lot easier because she didn't have to start thinking, okay, well, we have to get to soccer practice, or we have to get to school, or we have to get this. So, um, we were in a different situation. It was a little bit easier.
Yeah, and that's where I throw it back to Jen. So Jen works full time, has 2 kids, has a husband that works full time. And so I know, Jen, that you had the conversation with your family. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So when Reem and I discussed it and discussed like different options, and she, talked about Florida, and I was like, logistics, and I was like, that's so far away. And, she's like, sit down with the family. So I sent my husband and our 2 kids. I think my son was 15 when I signed up, and then my daughter was 11. So I sat them all down and let them know that this is what I was thinking, and what my expectations from them would be. They would have to do their homework, and I wouldn't have to. I shouldn't be the mom that has to yell them about their doing their homework or getting it done on time or going to bed on time or telling me like last minute if they have something going on. Same thing with my husband. My husband works nights. So, and while I was training, he was also, I can't even remember now. Maybe that was the year before. Sorry. He works nights, and so he was trying to do his workouts, but you all have to sit down and come together because it's not a decision that's made lightly. It does affect the entire family. On weekends, I explained to them that there would be events that I couldn't go to, although I did make every single one of my children's events during COVID when they did have one. They would be, they even helped a couple of times, like bringing water and nutrition to me on the bike course or out my run. I mean, everybody played a role in it. My mother-in-law played a role in it, like, helping shuttle kids to different things, even when it was COVID and they could go do some things. I needed to make sure that they knew what the expectations were so they weren't disappointed in me if I didn't get to go to something or be a part of something, or they were mad at me because dinner wasn't at the table at 5 o'clock. We had a meal plan. We had the schedule written out. If they had, homework, it was on the board. It was a huge adjustment, and it was definitely something that should be discussed with the family, and it shouldn't be taken lightly. You should, especially when you do have a family, it's very important to discuss it. And even with your friends and your family, like, this is what I'm doing. Like, what do you think? Like, you know, this is what I might need from you. Like my mother-in-law, she played a big role in it. So it was very helpful to have everybody, all their hands on deck.
It's nice to have the support. I think being a mom or dad with kids still at home, there's a fine line between the feeling of guilt and the feeling of I'm setting a really good example and being a role model for my kids. Some days I think you're out there riding your bike and you feel very guilty that you're not home. And then other days you're kind of like, oh, but I'm setting such a good example of a healthy lifestyle and setting a big goal and reaching my goal. So it's hard to be a parent with kids at home and training for an Ironman, but it's definitely doable. And you can definitely make them feel a part of it, just like you did by, helping them bring nutrition, and making sure you're present when you are home, so come home and do something relaxing with the kids. Go, when movies were around, which they're coming back now, but go see a movie, watch a movie at home, do some relaxing things where you're still recovering, but present with them, and versus getting on your computer or your phone or vice, those kind of things. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. What is something you didn't know that you wished you had known during your Ironman adventure? If anything.
You can
Something
go
you
like,
learned along the way that you would want other people to know ahead of time.
For me, it was, well, first of all, I just want to say, yes, I'm laying down, but I'm in recovery boots. I don't want you to think I'm just taking this too casual. So we did a 70.3 this weekend, and I'm just in a lot of pain. So
Same.
from the waist
I'm in
up,
my bed as well.
yeah.
My feet up.
But I think getting into the full training, depending on what your goals are, whether it's just to finish, whether it's to be competitive, regardless, it does take a lot of, and whether you have kids or don't have kids, it takes a lot of time. You will be away from your friends or from your spouse or from your kids for a significant portion of time. You can't fake it. I mean, there's just no way to fake Ironman training. So I think for me, it was realizing along the way just how much training goes into it, especially on the weekends if those are your days off. Because when you get into your 100-mile bike rides and then your 90-minute runs afterwards, sometimes that's with stops and everything else and drinks on your training rides. That might be a 5 to 6 hour bike ride and then a 90-minute run afterwards. That's another 8-hour workday. So by the time you pack everything up, you go train, you come home and you unpack, you're exhausted. And then you have somebody at home that says, oh, well, we're supposed to go to our friends tonight, or we're supposed to do this. And you don't want to do any of that. So you can't fake it. You got to be honest with your spouse, with your kids, and don't say, hey, everything will be fine, nothing will change, because it will change. I mean, um, even even though the lightest amount, if your goal is just to finish in 16:59, you still have to put some training volume in there to be able to do it. So you have to be honest with yourself about that.
What approximately would you consider you spent per month in equipment, upgrades, nutrition, bike tune-ups, repairs, new shoes, whatever it might be, just on an average, what would your monthly bill be towards Ironman training? Not including the registration fee, just a monthly average.
I want to say my monthly average was probably like between $400 and $500. I also had a bike payment. I bought a new wetsuit. I bought a lot of new things that I shouldn't need for a very long time. I mean, it was, you know, it's a it's a big it's a big commitment, not just like, you know, making sure you're doing workouts every day, but it's a big commitment financially.
Yeah.
I had to make sure that it was going to fit my budget, and I was like, okay, can this happen in 2020? Like, or do I mean, I spent over $10,000, but I don't regret 1 second of it. And there's not one day that goes by that I say, oh, I wish I didn't spend this, or I wish I didn't do Ironman because we could have this. That doesn't ever come through my mind.
Can you hear me, Jackie?
Yeah.
So I want to jump on that, and that's a fantastic question. But a lot of those investments that are done doing Ironman training are things that last a long time. I mean, so the wetsuit, Jen can have that wetsuit for whatever, 3 to 5 years, if not longer. I know Mike, same thing with the Normatec boots and the Hyper Ice. So it's not cheap, but a lot of that expense is also something that's going to last a long time, not like, oh, okay, Ironman is over and I have nothing to show for it.
Right. Your first Ironman, depending on how long you've been in the sport, will cost on average a lot more, because normally you're buying those things. The recovery boots. I bought a kicker. I already had a bike, thankfully, but I bought a kicker, and it's well worth it, and I'm not knocking it. I had a one-on-one coach that I would recommend to anybody. And so you have that monthly fee, you have the kicker. So it averages out to your first Ironman, as long as you hold on to the wetsuits and you hold on to the kicker and you're using the same bike, your first one is going to be a lot more expensive than your second one. And congratulations to all of you. I'm already putting you into your second one.
Yeah, I think that's one good point, Eric, that a lot of things we buy for Ironman are just because we're getting ready to do that first big Ironman, and those things we keep for years and years. But on top of the $800 registration fee, the gear, let's not like take the gear out of it, because that's stuff we're going to have for a long time. But you just have to take into consideration your travel, depending on how far you have to travel. Do you have to buy a plane ticket, or are you driving? So figure that into your budget. Like, so the plane ticket or gas to get to where you're going. How are you getting your bike to your Ironman? Are you able to drive it in the car? Are you going to fly it on the plane, because that's an upcharge? Or are you going to use Tri Bike Transport, which is a service that gets your bike from your city to the race city? And that's I don't know these days, but $300 and something, I would say. And then on the bigger months, and it's not every month of Ironman training, but the bigger months towards the end, when you're training 15, 20 hours a week, you do go through a lot of nutrition. So those cans of Gatorade or Clean or whatever products you're using, you can go through a can of that in a week. So, or canister. So that adds up. The gels, if you think, a gel's $1 a piece approximately, sometimes more, sometimes less, but on a 6-hour bike ride, you're going to go through at least $6 worth of gels and however much powder, then your recovery drink. So that's all stuff to consider as well.
You almost have to budget it like it's a huge vacation. You have to look at it like, what will we spend if we traveled to Europe, or what will we spend if we traveled for a week to Hawaii? And you have to budget it that way, because it's going to ultimately, if you add it all up with your travel and your hotel when you get there and your registration fees and coaching fees and everything else, it will be one of your more expensive vacations.
True, but worth it.
Oh, absolutely worth it.
All right, so shifting gears a little, we have a question that's come through the chat, and it's one I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. And the background is sometimes triathlon consumes a lot of mental bandwidth. How do you create a healthy balance between triathlon and work?
Great question.
I'm going to take that one first.
Yeah.
I mean, because when I did my first Ironman 20 years ago, and I was supposed to do my second one in 4 days, which I'm now not doing because unfortunately I had a bike accident. So I spent all that money and now it's gone, but there will be another one, and training goes forever. So when I did my first one, I was actually working 80-hour weeks as an attorney. And it was really tough to do all that training and work that kind of stuff, those kind of hours. And I would say that the first thing that you need to do is schedule your training sessions like you schedule anything else in your life. You can't be like, oh, I got to bike 3 hours today. You have to say, I'm going to ride my bike between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. today. Like put everything down. If you're going to the pool, allocate the time, the additional time it takes you to get there. Like the more that you can just work in and plan around it, the better it's going to be to just like to try to stay organized with that. I used to do workouts in the morning before I went to work. I take my do my treadmill runs on my dinner break at 5 o'clock. I'd come back and I'd go to work some more and just try to get it done. You try to take advantage of when you have free time, which for a lot of people who work full time is on the weekends. It's a lot to balance, but I think knowing what you have to do is the first step to it. And I think Mike and Jen did talk about that, like just having a good appreciation for how much time, and not just time, but how much energy it takes and how fatigued you're going to be after, and communicating. If you're working with a coach, communicating that with your coach, because as coaches, we're like, okay, here's the order. This is when you do your long ride. Here's when you do your long run. But you know what? If you're free and you want to be doing your long runs on a Wednesday instead of a Sunday, you say that to your coach, like, we're there to make your schedule work for you. So don't just kind of assume that there's one way that has to be. Just be really active with not your communication, not only with the people around you, but with your coach, so that you feel as in control as you can over your own schedule.
It's great advice, Reem.
Yeah.
Definitely communicate with your coach as much as possible, because we don't know as coaches when you need to do things or how many hours is good for you. So speaking of hours of training, Mike and Jen, what was your minimum average, not on a recovery week, but on a training week? And what did you max out on hours per week of training towards the end?
Don't even remember my minimum because it feels like it's so long ago, but my 2 peak weeks, I believe, were 32 and 34 hours of workouts.
Wow.
And then
impressive.
I took off 2 days of work, both weeks, Tuesday and Thursday. I do remember that, because we talked about that ahead of time. And I got extra days from work from like I had it planned out to the T with my days, and I had an amazing boss. Not sure I would have been able to do. And that's another thing, talking to your employer and making sure that they are on deck with it. There might be days we have to leave early, and I took extra days off to do workouts. So I just made sure my peak weeks, I took 4 days off in those 2 weeks, and then I left 2 weeks later to go to Florida, and then I had a quarantine for 14 days after. So I mean, I don't remember my least amount, not cover recovery. I'm guessing in the beginning it was probably 15 to 20 hours. I'm not sure.
What about you, Mike?
I'd say I definitely, Jen has me beat. I don't think I saw a 34-hour week.
I did.
I think
Reem's up there smirking.
Yeah, the two.
Reem is Jen's coach, for those of you who don't know.
Haha, Jen, my coach is better than your coach.
I'm not sure about that.
No. So I think probably there was a couple of weeks in there of 20 to a little bit over 20 hours is what I could do with work. And then I think it was on average, the high weeks or the medium was maybe 14 to 15 hours, somewhere in there, when it was all said and done. We did with my work. I work for our family business, so there was days where Eric and I would talk, and this goes back to communicating with your coach, where we would do more intensity instead of duration. So I would have limited time in the morning or limited time in the evening. So instead of a 3-hour endurance ride, we might do 90 minutes with a lot more higher intensity to be able to get the work in. But still, you think about your work week and throw another 20 hours, 22 hours of working out on top of it, or in Jen's case, 32 hours of working out. It's a lot, definitely a lot.
What do you feel the benefits were to working with a coach versus buying a training plan?
I think everybody should have a coach, but that's just me being selfish at this point because I know how great a coach is. When I very first started working with Reem, even before I decided to do the Ironman, I did Ohio. Her and I went back and forth with all these questions and answers, and I just like, okay, I'm just going to take the plunge. I'm just going to do it. Having the benefit of having your coach do your plan out your workouts is pretty amazing. Then you don't have to work your brain as much trying to figure that out. Like Mike said, communication with your coach, trying to figure out like what works best for your off day, like for your rest days. Are there days during the week that you'd like to have that are a little bit less? So like in my case, I have kids that my daughter's in competition dance and my son's in Boy Scouts and on the varsity swim team. So there were some things that worked better for my schedule. And I don't know if I would have gotten through Ironman training without a coach. It's a lot of time and commitment and a big commitment to make and not have a coach. I don't think I could have crossed the finish line without her.
Yeah.
You did the last quarter mile, Jen.
I'm trying not to cry.
Aw.
I think I'm sorry, Eric, I'm not going to cry over you, but no, I 100% think that you need a coach. Do people complete Ironmans without a coach? All the time, in every race, but it's a difference between whether or not you are going to have a good race and enjoy your experience, or just suffer for 140.6 miles. And there are things that a coach can give you that you're just not going to get out of a training plan. The technical aspect of it. What is your sweet spot for your FTP? What are your heart rate zones? What should you be doing? I mean, a training plan that you buy is just paper that says ride your bike for 5 hours, ride your bike for 6 hours, swim for 2 hours, swim this distance, but it doesn't give you any feedback over your heart rate, or when you should throttle down, or when you have more to give, or when your race day is coming up, what pacing you should be going. So you do complete it, because you can go out and buy a training plan and do 20 to 24 hours of training a week and get out there on race day and not know what your pacing and your heart rate is supposed to be, and blow up halfway through the race, and then your day is done. And then it's just the accountability factor also, because for us, it was Training Peaks. So I have those workouts on Training Peaks. He spells out exactly where my heart rate should be, what I should be doing. And then I can communicate back to him how I felt, how my legs felt, how my heart rate felt. And you just can't get that with a piece of paper.
Do you feel there was a sense of normalcy on some of your workouts to hate your coach, or to say, why in the hell did I sign up for this thing? I hate this. I don't want to do this. Can you explain those feelings?
Eric, I was going to say, Eric, would you like to answer for me?
Yeah, I'll let him answer.
No, go right ahead, Eric. I never hated Eric. Eric probably hated me at times, because he would know what kind of workout I had based off of my comments. If they were 3 or 4 sentences, it was a great workout. If it was a couple of paragraphs followed a half an hour later with an email with excuse my language, fuck this, I'm done, I'm not doing it, tear everything up, then he knew what my workouts were, and he would talk me off the ledge. So I never hated Eric, but I'm sure Eric had many glasses of vodka over some of the emails I sent.
No, it's normal, and that's a great question. I mean, it's honestly impossible to truly enjoy every workout that you've done, and I'll let Jen answer that. There's just days that you don't want to do that, and I think that's the accountability factor, is knowing that somebody's going to say, hey, what happened here and how can we fix that? But it's impossible to love every workout that you have to do to do your best on race day.
Yeah.
I never hated Reem. I obviously trained during COVID, so I just did one day at a time, and I never swore in any of my comments. There were some days where I wasn't like, the strength wasn't my greatest, like I didn't like mountain climbers, or some of the strength ones, and I didn't like them because I thought I wasn't good at them, but I became good at them. This is the whole part about training. You train your body to be the best it can be on race day. I highly recommend strength. I think that's what got me through Ironman. And there were good days and bad days. There was one day during training that we were about a month into COVID, and I sat on my couch. I only had an hour bike ride on my trainer, and I texted Reem and said, I can't do today. And she's like, get on your bike. It's just do 30 minutes. And then at 30 minutes, you want to stop, that's okay. I got on my bike and I did the whole ride. Sometimes you just need that little push. Like, you think you might not be able to do it, but if you don't communicate with your coach again, you can do it. Like, it's mostly, I believe it's mostly mental. You have to train your body, sure, physically, but if you think if you talk yourself out of trying to do something, of course you don't want to do it. Like this morning, I didn't want to wake up at 5 a.m. to go run outside in the dark, but I did. But that's, yeah, I loved Reem every single day.
Good. How could you hate Reem?
Exactly.
And and Jen brought up a great point that goes back to the coaching versus training plan is, when you have those days and she could communicate with her coach, if you just had a piece of paper or an online schedule and nobody to communicate with, more than likely those days where you don't feel like riding your bike, you're getting off your bike and you're not going to ride. But she had somebody to turn to that said, okay, just go 30 minutes. And then if you want to stop after 30 minutes, you can stop. And those are the accountability, the one-on-one accountability that a coach brings.
Did you guys have any mantras or visualizations that you would do on a regular basis, either inside or outside of training, to kind of keep you motivated and to ingrain that mantra or visualization into your mind for race day?
I think that comes with your why you chose to do an Ironman. I mean, I chose it for several different reasons. I chose it for myself. I chose it for my kids. I wanted to show them that I was a good role model, that no matter what you do, you just keep pushing yourself, and to be the best version of yourself. My son's getting ready to graduate next year, and I want, that's another big thing. Like, I want him to go out into the world and know that he can work, he can do and work wherever he wants, and to put 120% into it every day. And during training, and I was on my long bike rides, I would think about all those things. I would also think about my mom when she's not here anymore. So actually, I talked to her a lot before Reem was jumping up and down on the side of the road. During my bike ride, or like when the wind was hitting me, and I'm like, okay, just get me through this, like, you can talk to people, you could whatever you need to do to get through your ride or your day. You think about the good days you had. I also thought about all the things that I was thankful for, that I was healthy during COVID. I mean, I'm bringing that up again, but I trained during COVID. I mean, not many people did that, and I feel like I did it pretty well. I said to Reem every single day, I'm like, one day at a time. I'm like, I'm not sick. I'm like, I'm getting through this. I'm thankful for my health and all the people that are surrounding me that were happy and healthy still. And that was a, a blessing. And it got me through training every day.
I'm sure it was very hard to stay motivated during COVID because all the races were getting canceled. And so it's hard to stay motivated to put that volume in when you feel like, oh, there's a 90% chance that my race is going to get canceled anyhow. So good
And
job, Jen.
And I think my half marathon and my half Ironman, because I was supposed to do Virginia, the first year of Virginia, I believe they were both canceled in the same week. And I remember like sitting in my driveway with Reem, like, what do I do? And I made my own we made my own triathlon here in Oswego, New York. Like my finish line was made out of toilet paper by my husband and a friend. Like you have to improvise.
That's cute. Moving into the race day, let's just talk about a little bit of logistics. Did you guys, how many days ahead did you get there? And did you, eating purposes, did you eat most of your meals in your accommodations or did you go out? What would your advice be, like when to arrive and as far as food is concerned?
So for Chattanooga, if I remember correctly, the race was on a Sunday, and we got there on Wednesday, and we shared an Airbnb with a couple of friends, and so once we checked in, and then and Ironman always has. I didn't do mine during COVID, so my first or second during COVID. So you had the athlete meetings that you would go to, and you'd have check-in and the expo and all the pictures and family and stuff like that. And hopefully we're getting back into that and you guys will experience that. But so we got there Wednesday. I think we checked in on Thursday, uh, and then we had Friday off and bike check-in was Saturday. If I remember, it was like bike check-in and then bag drop-off was on Saturday. So there was kind of always something to do. But yeah, it is a full, and then you're there for a day or so after the race. So it's almost a full week. Um, I would get there a few days earlier than check-in, like we did. So Chattanooga was an awesome town. I loved it. We got to go out to eat, got to see some of the downtown area, and not have to worry about racing the next day or even 2 days later. We were able to just kind of get there and kind of chill a little bit.
Putting yourself on the starting line of race day, what were your thoughts? When your toes are in the sand or on the riverbank there, Mike, what were your thoughts?
So with Chattanooga, you sit, and you did it. So the buses take you, and they take you to the swim start, which is 2 miles away, and then they drop you off, and you kind of just sit there for 90 minutes to 2 hours waiting to start. So I had a lot of time to listen to music and just chill. But as the sunrise comes up, and then you really start thinking about it, you really just start thinking that it's your victory lap. Eric would say that, and you would say that too, Jackie. A lot of people say that your victory lap. You've already put in hundreds of hours, and I don't know how many thousands of miles on the bike and hundreds of miles running and the miles and miles of swimming. So you've already done that distance over and over again. So now it's just kind of a victory lap, and you just try and take everything in so you can enjoy it.
What about you, Jen?
I had a lot of emotions. I talked to everybody the night before. Nobody could. I had to be dropped off like kind of far away, and I walked everything by myself. Checked in. I was feeling great. The second I heard Mike Riley's voice, I kind of cried. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really here. And then I got ready, and there was a girl that was right next to me. It was her first Ironman and her husband's fifth. And it was kind of nice. And like, I was relaxed and I was talking to her, and we lined up together. The second that I put my swim cap on and we had to line up, and then you put your mask on, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of like hyperventilating just a little bit. Like my heart can like was beating of like 1,000 beats if that's even possible. And then I saw rival team, and then I felt a little bit better. So you and Kim and everybody, I was like, okay. And then having that support and like a team there to support, I was like, I cried and I was like, okay, I'm good. And then the second they said, put your mask in the garbage can and go, I mean, you don't have time to think. You're like, once you're in the water, you just go. And all my anxiety went away as soon as I started. Like, it was just the few minutes beforehand and all the what ifs. Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah.
That's so true. Once the race starts, it's go time.
Yep.
You guys aren't allowed to say the finish line because we know that's the best part of the race. So outside of the finish line, what was your greatest moment during your first Ironman? Not the finish line, but during the race day.
That's really hard to say. I have a couple. My greatest moment would probably be getting through the swim in the ocean that I have never swam in before, except the practice with you. The greatest moment also is having my coach, my friend, and my kids there, like watching me. So, and I got to race with Chris, like, to be able to see him running on the course and seeing, the first person with Down syndrome to race. And I ran behind him. I ran in front of him. Like I was, I saw him on the bike course, like to see how much he pushed himself. I mean, that's a miracle in itself. Like there's just a lot of things about race day, and I feel like it's really hard to pinpoint all that.
So
And to know that you pushed yourself, like that you're pushing yourself to be the best version of yourself on race day.
So there was two for me, and again, I hope that you guys that race it get some sort of normalcy and experience a real Ironman race with the spectators, because for Chattanooga, that town comes out in droves. So there was two moments. One at the I forget the name of the town, but you're almost at special needs, and they bus people from the town to around the special needs area. And they have it, if you've ever watched the Tour de France, they have like the barricades on either side of the street. But the people there are so deep and so loud cheering you, and they're banging on the side that you can only really fit one bike through at a time. So riding through that, I just kind of sat up and slowed down and just took all that in. Everybody's, just screaming and yelling at you. And then on the run, there wasn't anywhere. The run on Chattanooga is god awful. It's miserable. And it's an extremely hard run, but it is also a college town. So, and it was a Sunday was the race because it was football. And as we went back into some of the neighborhoods, the college kids that lived there would take their couches out onto the front lawn, and they were sitting there on their couch with their TVs outside with extension cords, cheering us on, asking us if we wanted beers as we're running by, and they're watching football, and they're just screaming at you. And then you come around the corner, and it's two loops of Chattanooga, and you go over the footbridge, and on the footbridge there, people are just lined up, and they are just yelling at you to go. And they don't know you, but and your name is on your tag, and they're screaming your name. And it was, for me, it was the people. It was that whole experience. And that's what makes Ironman that much better than some of the independent races, is because they have the volunteers and they have the spectators that come out like that and the crowd support. So I really hope that soon that we get back to that for all of you guys.
did you have anything special in your special needs run or special needs bike bags? Any special treats, a note from the family, anything like that?
Food.
Mhm.
Food. I trained the entire time with like half peanut butter jelly sandwiches, orange slices, Fig Newtons. I had extra goos. I actually packed. Reem introduced me to like the watermelon flavor for the Gatorade, and I really liked it. I felt like it was like, I don't know, it was refreshing. So on my bike and my run, I had like a small little bottle of that. And when I did my second loop for my run, I added the watermelon in there, even though at that time I wanted nothing to do with Gatorade at that point. But nutrition is definitely key. Um, I can't talk enough about having like a peanut butter and like, you know, you don't want to eat a lot to like, you know, get sick or anything, but you need to be able to sustain. That's a long day. And nutrition is very important for that. So training with your nutrition your entire time and seeing what your body is capable of and what it can take and what it can't take or works with your body is really important.
Mhm.
Good. Mike, did you have anything special?
I did. I had I had Coca-Cola and I had frozen M&Ms. And so I had the Coke I wrapped in a towel, small towel, and then put that inside of an old lunchbox or lunch pail so it stayed cold. And the M&M stayed cold. And then I downed the Coke at special needs and took the M&Ms and put it in my little bento box on the bike and would just pull the M&Ms out for the next 56 miles every once in a while and eat them. And if you have something, I would recommend whatever your favorite snack is or something, have it in special needs because you have that to look forward to. You know that that's waiting for you at mile 56. And so you just think, okay, let me just get to special needs and then I can get my Snickers bar, whatever it is that you have waiting for you, grab it and take it with you. And then that will maintain your mindset at least for the next 10 miles, 15 miles of the bike.
And after the race, how long did it take the pain to go away, or how long did you recover? Somebody asked that question, so
For me,
answer it.
it was 2
Answer it
days.
honestly.
It was
2 days?
So I was crazy and left the next day. Would not recommend that. Sitting in the car, we stopped at a hotel, and we slept, but we had to stop very often, like every hour and a half to 2 hours, so I can stretch my legs. So after the second day of traveling, I got home. So the third day, I was feeling pretty back to normal. I was a little sore still,
Wow.
but I was feeling pretty good. And I think a lot of that comes from like training, like, you know, not cheating yourself, not giving up on yourself. I feel like that's really important. So
I should
What
have
did
done
you
mhm. I was going to say I should have done a 32-hour week because it took me a lot longer than 2 days to recover.
It was
I
all
did
of it.
yoga. That's like including everything.
still
Oh, well.
dying from Saturday for half?
I
Oh
know.
my God.
I know.
We're
I
older
know.
than you though, Jen. We're much older than you. So
That
that's
is
our
true.
excuse.
That is true. I think probably 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about what did you have after the race to eat or recovery drink? Did you have a meal?
I asked for a peppermint patty and a Diet Pepsi, but I only took one sip of the Diet Pepsi, and I didn't even want the peppermint patty.
Yeah.
They had gotten some pizzas while I was out running. I was like, that sounds perfect. Let me have a piece of pizza. I just wanted to take a shower.
Yes.
That was that you think that you're going to want to eat all things. And you really, at least for me, I was not hungry. Like I wanted a shower and you think that you're going to sleep fantastic. But for me, I didn't sleep because you're still coming down off of adrenaline. And then once the adrenaline stops and your body starts to hurt, you're not sleeping. And I didn't want to eat. I was just I didn't want to eat. I wanted a little bit of water. I grabbed one of those cold pieces of pizza in the village afterwards, and I think I took a couple of bites of it while we were waiting for other people to finish, and threw it away.
But did you wake up starving the next day?
So the
I
next
heard
day, I did. I took my inner fat kid out to breakfast and had biscuits. There's a maple biscuit company, I think that was the name of it, or something like that, in Chattanooga, and downed a lot of biscuits and gravy and everything that was in front of me.
All day.
Yeah, all day.
For 2,
all day.
3, 4 days.
Yeah,
Yeah,
seriously.
I deserve this.
Yes.
Absolutely. So we have a few messages that are sitting in the chat box. So the first one has a few parts to it. So Jackie, you might want to start tackling some of these, but
I can't see them.
no, there's
Hold
some
on.
that were just direct to me. So
Okay.
is settling into a full Ironman realistic, or is it better to do 70.3? So this is coming from a newer triathlete. Is one full Ironman per year enough, or should I sign up for 70.3s? Also, there's a few parts to this, so I'm just going to read it all. I'm very goal oriented, so after I accomplish 140.6, I have to figure out next. For people who did a full Ironman, what was it like riding the high for the weeks following? Did you schedule another race immediately? What's harder than a sport 140.6? What's your goal after a full Ironman, or is it a bucket list race? So a lot there. I think the first one was on, do you jump into a 140.6 before you do a 70.3? What do you think, Jackie?
Oh, I thought we were waiting for Jen or Mike.
Yeah.
I did. I think, I mean, it all comes down to the training and your motivation. So you don't have to do a half before you do a full by any means. If you're totally motivated to training and, you know, put a year into training for an Ironman, there's a lot of base building that's going to be involved, but it's definitely doable. Personally, I did do a half before my full. What about you, Reem?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I did a half my first year, and then I did a half and a full my second year, and then I didn't do an Ironman for 20 years, and I did Olympic for a long
It was your bucket list.
It was seriously bucket list. I was like the proudest moment of my life, but I never want to do another one. And it only came like, okay, 20 years later, I want to see if I can do one faster than I did when I was in my 30s. So, yeah, I think, because I think they're really different races. I mean, when you go from a half to a full, the pacing is very different. The nutrition is such a big, the amount of training you need to do. There's a lot of differences. It's nice to have a sense of what you're getting into before you get into it. But I feel like there's a lot of difference between those two distances. So
I agree with both of you guys on that. I think the better question is, or the better answer is, yes, you can do an Ironman without doing a half, but I think physiologically speaking, your body will be probably more adapt to what you're going to encounter for the full if you've done a half, mentally as well. I'm kind of like with Reem. I did a bunch of sprints, and then I did Olympic. I did 2 halves, and then I did a full, and I said, I never want to do this again. And then a few years later, I'm like, you know what? I want to do it way faster than I did it the first time. So that's kind of like an answer to what's next after you do your first full is, can I do it better? That would be one of the answers that, I come up with is, how can I do this better? One Ironman a year or 2 Ironman a year, it really depends on your schedule logistically. Like we said, it's not a cheap sport. It does get a little cheaper as you get into it, but the logistics and the training is still need to be there.
all right, so we have another question here, and this is for Jen or Mike to respond to. Did either of you feel a little nausea from all the hydration and adrenaline after the race, like this from the sweetness of the nutrition?
I didn't
I
have
did.
any of that after the race. I did feel nauseous during my run. And I don't know why, but I was sick of having goos and Gatorade. but I felt like my stomach was fine afterwards. I just wanted to eat everything.
Yeah, I wasn't nauseous. I was like Jen, I wanted nothing sweet. I was tired of Gatorade. I was tired of all of that stuff. But I don't remember feeling nauseous. But again, I didn't eat right after, so um, maybe that played into it.
I think one thing with Ironman and half is the nutrition or the fueling becomes just as important as your physical training. And you really need to, like, everybody's gut is different and everybody can tolerate or not tolerate certain things and certain amounts of things. And Reem and Eric and I and all of our coaches are very, very well versed on fueling from our staff of dietitians. But if it's something above and beyond, you're working with your coach and you're trying to dial in your nutrition, if it's something that just can't be figured out with your coach, we do have the dietitians on staff. You can consult with them. There's a lot. I'm not trying to sell anything here, but there's many different options and price points for all the things they do for, if you just can't figure it out on your own or with your coach. From anything from just an hour consultation phone call all the way up to getting a fueling plan, a nutrition plan, a sweat test. So this is one of those times where it is really important to focus just as much on your fueling as on your physical training, because you can do all these hours of training and not worry about dialing in your nutrition, and your whole day could be ended abruptly before you cross the finish line because of GI distress or a lack of calories, and you just can't physically go on anymore because you're not taking enough calories in. And then the other thing too is, and Eric and Remo agreed to this, you have to train your bodies during training to take in all these calories, because our stomachs are not used to handling all this sugar and all the carbohydrates in the drinks. And so it's something you have to train your gut over time to be able to handle, so you're not getting sick all the time. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I have
something.
to train orange Gatorade extensively because that's what's on the bike course. And I think it is the most foul flavor of Gatorade. But you don't, like, other than sticking something in your special needs bag, you can't carry all your stuff. And the first few times I drank it, I was like, this tastes like baby aspirin to me. I can't handle it.
It does, you're
Kept
right.
drinking it and drinking it and drinking it. I was like, okay, I can do this, but you definitely want to practice your nutrition, practice what's on the course. Think about that in advance, what you're going to take in, because it's nice to be able to carry some of your things, but if you can use the nutrition on the course, then it's a lot easier in some ways, but you've got to know what your body can handle. Nutrition is, yeah, it's a huge deal. I found myself that when I didn't hydrate well enough, I would get nauseous. And so that was something to learn from. So adjusting as you train, if you're feeling something, then how you adjust to overcome that, because yeah, without the right nutrition, you're pretty doomed. I don't know how many times I've seen people hit the run and think that they're going to be able to do a 4-hour marathon, and then they finish in 6.5 hours. You're like, well, what just happened in there? Something fell apart. So we're getting pretty close to coming up on an hour. If anyone has a question that they want to ask directly, you're welcome to come off of mute, or if there's anything that you want to share about your own experiences, you're welcome to do that. Just give a sec. Anyone? All right, well then let's wrap it up. Thank you to coaches Jackie and Eric for joining, and Jen and Mike for sharing all your experiences. I hope that everyone found this helpful. And if you have any questions and you have follow-up, please feel free to reach out to Jackie or Eric or myself, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. All right, have a good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.